So now that you've become really comfortable with your clients and they want to go take a look at a property and you've asked an appropriate amount of qualifying questions to kind of narrow down what it is they might be looking at. Some people are pretty excited. They just want to go look at homes, and that's fine. It's good for them to be excited because if they're not excited, then they probably don't have enough emotional horsepower to get over the finish line. But you owe it to yourself and you owe it to them to do a little bit of homework before you just start touring through houses. Now, if they're a sign call and they're calling on a specific property, that's great. For sure, you probably need to show them that property unless it just does not align at all in terms of what their needs and wants and expectations are. But fundamentally, here's what I'd prefer that you do. You've gone through this whole interrogation process and you're asking them a lot of questions. And so during that time frame, what you want to do is really narrow in on not just what their needs and wants are, but of course their budget and their time frame. We all know there's another home coming on the market next week. Sometimes buyers can get into a mindset that, well, if we don't find it today, that's fine, we can wait. Well, maybe they can and maybe they can't based on their other criteria. So I need you to have a plan when it comes to showing property. And there's a variety of different rules that I kind of have for showing property. And, they're my rules. They might be your rules at some point. And I don't know if there's any one great totally right way to show property, but there are some key mistakes that you can make that you need to avoid. And then there's also some key events that have to happen to help facilitate this process in a little bit more orderly and professional way. So here we go. Have a plan. What does that mean? I highly recommend that you preview every single property before you walk a client into that property. Now, I understand that there are some market conditions that make this very difficult. If there's a brand new listing and there's a super high demand on homes in that neighborhood and 75 people show up on, as soon as it hits the market, you might not have the ability to preview that home. However, you're at a huge disadvantage ultimately when it comes to helping your customer if you're not previewing every single property that you walk them through. This should be the golden rule. If you have an exception to this, it better have a really good reason associated with it in terms of urgency or ability or time. You don't want to walk into a property and not know what you're walking into. It could make you look very unprofessional, very unprepared, and you're losing credibility. And as a buyer's agent, that's really all you have. You have your credibility and you're helpful and you're showing people properties that they can afford within their price range, within their budget, within their time frame, all these different criteria. Have a plan. Okay, plot out what properties you are going to see when you start in the morning. In the morning, let's meet at 10 o'clock. I've set a handful of appointments to take a look at these homes with you. Today we're going to see 5 houses. I don't recommend that you take anyone through more than 5 houses in one day, and there's other people that might say that number shouldn't be more than 3. Consumers today really want to feel like they're seeing everything that's totally available on the market, and if you short that, it could be a problem for you. Now, the truth of the matter is you don't want to show a bunch of properties to your client that don't meet their criteria, but if you only show them 2 properties and say, hey, these are the only 2 on the market that meet your basic criteria, in your time frame, take it or leave it. Now, you might be 100% accurate with that, but there's always going to be a suspicion sometimes at the back of that person's mind that, well, maybe there's something more. There has to be more than 1. There has to be more than 2. And as a result, again, you might lose credibility even though you are 100% accurate. Truth of the matter is, if you're just now starting with these people, these clients, and this is your first time out, you're going to have to find some sort of rules of engagement where both of you can be comfortable. And this is definitely a part of that plan. You kind of need to set those ground rules. Today we're going to see 5 homes. I've previewed 15 homes here in the area that meet your basic criteria and your budget. I was able to schedule 5 appointments for today. Great, so that's a rule. We're not going to see more than 5, right? Here's another rule. which I like to put out there for my buyers, and that is, you know what, folks, after we walk through every home and after we leave the home, I'm going to ask you three questions. And the three questions are: is this a property that you'd consider? Number one. Number two, I hate the property. I don't want it. I don't want it. Or number three, is this the home you'd like to buy today? So here's why I give people a little bit of preparation in advance that I am going to ask those questions. Because that third question seems really aggressive. Oh my God, is this the house you want to buy today? Well, if it's the house they want to buy today, for gosh sakes, you need to know about it. If for any number of reasons you get through showing that property and they say, no, 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 we don't like this house at all, great. So can you give me a little bit of context around that? You go back into qualifying mode, you start asking some additional qualifying questions. What is it about this particular home that just turned you off or just was not in alignment? So here's a great opportunity. So you think you may have learned quite a bit during your buyer interview in terms of needs and wants. Well, now the rubber hits the road and you're walking through properties and you find out that some of what they may have mentioned to you wasn't really in alignment with the experience of walking through the house. And so, were they lying to you? No, of course they weren't lying to you. It's just that there's now the practicality of walking through the property. You see it, people are visual. I really, really don't like this thing. Or, do you see how the kitchen was kind of configured like this? This is absolutely what we're looking for. Take these opportunities to show these initial properties to dial in on those needs and those wants. It's absolutely essential to do it at this time. You're most likely going to get the best answers to your qualifying questions when you're standing in the house, because the person's going to have to visualize, how do I use this house? What's the utility? Even though I did think I wanted this certain feature, I wanted the kitchen to look a certain way, but now that I'm standing in this kitchen, yeah, you know what? This feels good. I like it. I really, really like this. Now, how valuable is that? It's absolutely essential. Now, it's not theoretical. You're not having a theoretical discussion about a gourmet kitchen that may or may not exist in the ether. You're actually having a tangible asset. You're standing there and you're doing a comparison analysis to needs, wants, what did you have in the past, what were your aspirational goals in the future around this particular feature of the house. You're really making a heck of a lot of progress. Showing property is really that subtle art of not just presentation, but requalification, justification, and understanding, okay, is this going to work? Is there compromise here? What does this really look like? How am I really going to live here? When you're showing property to a couple, make sure that you're spending an appropriate amount of time and attention on each of them as individuals and also considering them as a couple. It's not good enough that one person wins and another person loses. In order for you to successfully get over the finish line, which means writing an offer that gets accepted, everyone has to win, right? So some people have different likes and tastes in terms of different parts of the home. The floor plan might be super important to everybody. However, maybe you're walking through a house that has fit and finish that doesn't really highlight the features of that floor plan, and they need maybe someone to point that out. Not everybody is able to conceive about making minor changes to a home or a floor plan. Another great opportunity, ask, is there any additional money in your budget? You know, you talked about wanting a gourmet kitchen. This kitchen definitely is large. It's got a great deal of potential, but also it's somewhat dated. Would you consider purchasing a property even though the kitchen had to get remodeled? What are you doing? You are asking detailed questions while you're showing property because you're trying to measure and measure and measure and measure. Am I going in the right direction? Is this making sense? Are we looking at the right home? Are we looking at the right home? Are we looking at the right home? Why? Because after we leave the home, again, I'm going to ask the question, do you like the home? Would you consider it? Is this one that we can put on the list? Is this in the top 2 or 3? Or is it a property that you would absolutely not consider? You do not want the house. Or is this a home you'd like to buy today? So the reason I say, is this the home you'd like to buy today? It's because I don't want to create any ambiguity about what's going to happen next. The number one reason why people stall in the decision-making process is they're unclear as to what's going to happen for that next step. And so it might seem obvious to a professional to say, hey, well, you want to write, would you like to write an offer on this home? Would you like to take this one off the market? Would you like to, would you like me to call the listing agent and get things started? Right? So all of that is really, really ambiguous, super ambiguous. Oh yeah, sure, I'd like to take it off the market. In fact, let's take a bunch of them off the market and write some offers. No, 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 no. Are we selecting your one? Is this your one of a kind based on your budget and your time frame? Also, what I'm doing is I'm preparing this person to write an offer that's going to get accepted. Sometimes markets are super hot and you're going to have multiple buyers on a single property, multiple offers on a single property. I didn't say, would you like to write an offer on this property? What I said is this the property you'd like to buy? If the answer is yes, then this is really setting me up for that next discussion. So remember earlier, folks, we talked about a little bit about market conditions, and the market's really hot and we have multiple people interested in the home. And you're not trying to create stress or duress, but what you're trying to do is educate this customer as to market conditions. And if you wait, you might not get this home. If that happened, would you be okay with that? Well, now you start really finding out what their core motivation is. If they say, yeah, well, we could take it or leave it. Let's just, can we offer $5,000 below asking and see what happens? And so sometimes your buyer has to work through a process with you because they don't necessarily understand or believe that you understand the market. And maybe they have to go through a process of writing a couple of offers and not getting them accepted. You need to reduce the amount of time you're spending in that mode. These people have to understand you, they have to trust you, they have to believe you. And so you need to provide evidence to that fact. Back in the buyer interview, you need to give specific examples of homes that were on the market for 2 days and got 5, 10, 15 offers, and the property ended up selling for 3, 5, 8, 9% above their asking price, 50% above their asking price, depending on where you are in the market. They have to see the evidence. You have to show it to them. You don't want to waste a lot of time writing offers that don't get accepted, particularly if you've narrowed it down to their one of a kind. And this is the whole purpose of showing property. Is this your one of a kind? Given your time frame, given your budget and your core criteria, is this is the house? There's 15 homes on the market in your price range. Half of those homes are not within an appropriate distance to the elementary school. And you also said that access to the interstate was important. And so if you show those 5 houses in one day or 3 houses in one day, and it turns out that none of them, they're not excited about any of them, then you're going to have to go back in and you're going to have to help them reevaluate their core criteria. And that is, okay, in this list of top 4 things, top 5 things, where's the easiest place for us to compromise in terms of expanding the search? Now, slippery slope when you start doing this, because you can expand the search, expand the search, expand the search. After you've shown X number of homes, there's going to be some frustration that sets in on your part. There's going to be some frustration that sets in on their part. And they could get to a point where they've just seen too many houses. And you need to avoid this if at all possible. I'm not saying force people to make decisions faster, but people do have to understand that time is of the essence when it comes to writing an offer. You're going to find that some of the customers that you're dealing with are like very fast decision makers. They're like at 3 minutes in the microwave and it's ready to rock and roll. Other folks that you're going to be dealing with are more like a crock pot, right? They have to think about it and they've got to simmer and they've got to think about it and they've got to simmer. Not a problem. It's just a different style and evaluation. Just as long as you make sure that you make sure that you tell them the home that they looked at today and wanted to think about until tomorrow could very well be the same home that somebody saw yesterday that's going to buy today. Again, I'm not trying to create stress or duress. I'm trying to help people understand what it's going to take for them to procure the property that they need around their time frame and their budget. Please hit that subscribe button, and don't forget, visit our website and schedule your free 30-minute evaluation.